Somewhere in every fat loss attempt comes the thought, what if I just went harder? Slashed the food, doubled the training, got it over with in 6 weeks instead of 6 months. The internet is full of people promising exactly that, usually shirtless. So we did what this channel does. We went and read what actually happens to people who lose fat very fast, including one large study that followed over 6,000 real dieters through a national patient register, which is about as close to the truth as this field gets. This isn't a lecture about willpower, it's an honest accounting of the costs. And one of them will genuinely surprise you because it has nothing to do with muscle, metabolism, or motivation. Let's weigh it up. First, let's be fair to the instinct, because dismissing it is lazy and a bit insulting. Slow fat loss demands sustained attention for months. Being sort of dieting for half a year is genuinely draining in a way that a hard, short push isn't. Fast results are motivating. Seeing the scale move keeps people going. And there are legitimate medically supervised uses of rapid weight loss before certain surgeries and in specific clinical situations where the benefits outweigh the risks. So the question was never, are you weak for wanting this? The question is, what does it cost and who ends up paying? Here's the one almost nobody puts in a transformation video: your gallbladder. Rapid weight loss substantially raises your risk of gallstones. The mechanism is reasonably well understood. When you're losing fat quickly, your liver secretes more cholesterol into bile, which pushes it toward the point where it crystallizes. And if you're eating very little fat, your gallbladder barely contracts, so bile sits there stagnant instead of being flushed through. Two problems compounding each other. And this isn't theoretical. Back in 1992, a study in Digestive Diseases and Sciences, funded partly by the National Institutes of Health, followed people on a very low-calorie program and confirmed by ultrasound that none had gallstones at the start. By 16 weeks, close to 11% of those still in the study had developed them. The Obesity Action Coalition puts the figure as high as 1 in 4 for people using very low-calorie diets. But the study that really settles it is Swedish. Published in the International Journal of Obesity by Johansson and colleagues at the Karolinska Institutet, it followed people enrolled in a commercial weight loss program across 28 centers. They matched 3,332 people on a very low-calorie diet against 3,332 on a more moderate low-calorie diet, matched for age, sex, body mass index, waist size, and gallstone history. Then they tracked gallstone events through the Swedish National Patient Register, so this isn't self-reported, it's hospital records. The result? 48 gallstone events requiring hospital care in the very low-calorie group, against 14 in the moderate group. That's a hazard ratio of 3.4, roughly 3 times the risk. And of all the gallstone events across both groups, 61% ended in surgery to remove the gallbladder. Now, you might reasonably be thinking, fine, but they lost a lot more weight, so maybe that trade is worth considering. So let's look at that, because the researchers reported it. At the 1-year mark, the very low-calorie group had lost 11.1 kilos. The moderate group had lost 8.1 kilos. That's a difference of 2.8 kilos, about 6 pounds. 6 pounds at 1 year for roughly triple the risk of a gallstone serious enough to put you in hospital, with a majority of those cases ending in gallbladder removal surgery. That is the entire aggressive dieting proposition in one comparison, and it's why we wanted to make this video. It's not that fast dieting doesn't work, it's that the extra return 12 months later is far smaller than people imagine, while the risks are considerably more concrete. And here's a detail that tells you how seriously researchers take this. Modern weight loss trial protocols routinely build in a safety rule. If a participant loses more than about 3 pounds a week for several consecutive weeks, staff intervene and slow them down, sometimes by increasing their calories. Some protocols also require participants to eat a small minimum amount of fat daily, specifically to keep the gallbladder contracting. The people running the studies are actively protecting participants from the exact thing the internet is selling as a shortcut. Second cost. When you lose weight, some of what leaves is always lean tissue, muscle and bone, not just fat. And the more aggressive the deficit, the worse that ratio tends to get. The Obesity Action Coalition is explicit about why this matters. Following strict protocols under professional supervision helps minimize that lean mass loss. And that's precisely why physician supervision exists for very low-calorie diets in the first place. The consequence is unpleasant in a specific way. You finish lighter, but with less muscle, a lower metabolic rate, and less of the tissue that actually gives your body shape. That's the skinny fat problem we covered in its own video, arriving as a result of the diet, with a metabolism now working slightly harder against you. You've made the underlying problem worse while making the scale look better. And bone matters too, particularly as you age. Third, and this is the one the transformation videos never film, what severe restriction does to your mind. Crash dieting is commonly associated with irritability, anxiety, low mood, difficulty concentrating, and food preoccupation, thinking about food constantly. Rapid weight loss can also bring dizziness and fatigue. That food preoccupation point deserves more than a passing mention. Constantly thinking about food during severe restriction is not a character flaw, and it is not weak mindedness. It's a predictable physiological response. Your body is doing exactly what it evolved to do when energy gets scarce. But for some people, that state becomes the doorway into a genuinely disordered relationship with eating, and that is much harder to walk back out of than any amount of weight is to lose. So if that's where you are or where you've been before, please talk to a doctor or a qualified professional rather than pushing harder. That's not a disclaimer we're reading out to cover ourselves. On a topic like this, it's the most important sentence in the video. So is supervised rapid loss just as bad? No, and we're not going to pretend otherwise, because never do this would simply be false. Medically supervised rapid weight loss exists for real reasons and helps real people. The difference is everything the internet version strips out. Screening beforehand to check you're a suitable candidate, monitoring throughout, protein and micronutrients structured to protect lean mass, sometimes preventive medication for people at high gallstone risk, and a clinician actively watching for the complications we've just described. That's the entire point of supervision. Somebody competent is paying attention to your gallbladder and your blood work while your body goes through something demanding. What you cannot do is take the aggressive half from a YouTube video, leave the medical half behind, and expect the same outcome. That isn't being hardcore. That's running the risky portion of a clinical protocol with none of the safety apparatus. If genuinely rapid loss suits your situation, and for some people it does, that's a conversation with a doctor, and a completely legitimate one to have. So, unglamorously, here's where it all points: a moderate, sustainable pace, roughly the 1 to 2 pounds a week the CDC describes, protects more of your muscle, keeps you outside the highest risk gallstone window, treats your head better, and holds up far more reliably a year later. Faster isn't a shortcut with a price tag attached that you simply choose to pay. Very often, it's a detour: 6 extra pounds at 12 months, a meaningfully higher chance of surgery, less muscle than you started with, and a worse relationship with food than when you began. The bottom line: 4 points. 1. Rapid fat loss carries a real, documented gallstone risk, roughly 3 times higher on a very low-calorie diet than a moderate one in a large Swedish study, with most of those cases ending in gallbladder surgery. 2. In that same study, all that bought was under 3 kilos of extra loss at 1 year. 3. Aggressive dieting costs you lean mass and takes a genuine mental toll, including food preoccupation that can become something more serious. 4. Supervised rapid loss exists for good reasons, but the supervision is the safety, and you can't download that part. Moderate keeps winning, which is boring and true. That's aggressive fat loss. Weighed up honestly, not a lecture, just the receipts. Thank you for watching, and for being the kind of person who reads the costs before paying them. We're genuinely grateful you're here. If this was useful, follow Weighing It Up and switch on notifications. We post several videos a week on fat loss, GLP-1s, and diets, and the bell keeps you up to date. And if you've been through a crash diet and come out the other side, share what you learned in the comments. That's often exactly the thing that stops someone else making the same trip. We love hearing how you're getting on. Until then, we read the studies, we check the prices, and we weigh it up.